Well, good evening, everyone, ladies, gentlemen, and members. Welcome to tonight's Planning Policy Local Plan Committee meeting held here in the Council's committee room. Before we start the meeting, there are no fire alarms drills planned for tonight, so if the alarm should sound, please leave the room through the main doors there and assemble outside the main entrance. This meeting is being broadcast live and a recording of that will be available on the Council website. We now go to the agenda, and agenda item 1 is apologies and substitution.
Thank you, Chairman. I can report 2 apologies this evening. One apology is from Councillor Mike Bush, who is a member of this committee. There is no substitute for him this evening. The other apology is from Councillor Andy Baker, who is the portfolio holder for housing and planning. As you know, that he has a standing invitation to attend meetings of this committee to give the views of the executive on strategic matters. He would normally have been here this evening, but unfortunately he is unwell.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 2 is minutes of the last meeting. These have been circulated. Members, are you happy for me to sign them as a true record? Thank you very much. Thank you. The next item is declaration of interest. Any members got any declaration? Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chairman. One declaration of interest on page 55, policy PPL 12B, St Osoph Priory. I have other registered interests as I'm a trustee of the St Osoph Priory Education Trust, so but that doesn't affect my decision making tonight.
Okay.
I've taken advice from the
You've taken advice from Montrose. Thank you. Next item is a question or notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule number 38.
None received, Chairman.
Thank you. Agenda item 5 is public speaking. Do we have any public speakers tonight?
Yes, Chairman. We have one speaker this evening who's registered to speak, and another member of the public has submitted a written statement which will be taken forward as a response to the public consultation. The member of the public who is registered to speak and I assume is here this evening is a Mr. Chris Morris, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Morris, would you like to make your way to the front where the microphone is, please? You will have 3 minutes and the clock will give you a prompt when there's 30 seconds left. Please do, yeah. And the light should come on in front of you.
Okay. Right, lovely.
Yeah,
this is my first time for a while. Good evening. As a long-standing resident of Great Bentley, I have seen the population grow considerably with approximately 600 new homes in recent years. I'm sure many of you are aware of the parking and traffic problems we already experience. According to the SHLAA published in December, tendering are now proposing to allow in the region of 225 further homes in Great Bentley, in addition to those that are already under construction. My main concern is the road safety issue. According to the SHLAA, tendering now propose new development on land on the east and west of Plough Road and south of the railway station. Great Bentley Parish Council have, however, expressed a preference for sites on the north and south of Wheeley Road and east of Heckfords Road. Their argument is that these sites provide much better access to the A133 and will cause less congestion in the village. My argument is that people move to the village primarily to use the facilities, e.g. the local primary school and the railway station. The sites along Wheeley Road are in some places approximately 1 mile from the school, and railway station, and the residents will undoubtedly drive into the village. A mother with young children, for example, is unlikely to walk to the primary school, and it is the parking which is causing the congestion, not the through traffic. North of the railway, Plough Road has almost continuous parking. This is a two-lane road, so traffic through there cannot flow. I have given committee members photographs of the situation that exists, particularly around the school where children are crossing the road between parked cars and oncoming traffic. Between the railway and the Plough Public House, we have the school, a Chinese takeaway, we have a garage, a hairdresser's, we have a bakery, cafe, and a Tesco Express. There's also 4 access roads, which is Station Road, which has got 2 access points. We have the Cut and Morella Close, and again, a serious road safety hazard. More cars driving into the centre of the village, resulting in more parked cars, can only make this matter worse. The majority of residents feel that we have had enough housing already, but it makes sense that any new developments are as close to the station, etc., as possible, which is in line with recent government guidelines. Incidentally, the current Taylor Wimpey application for further 80 houses in Wheely Road has been objected to by Highways in respect of the means of access and the issue of infrastructure. They have also this week, although last week I think actually, have objected to application 25/01633 outline for land north of Wheely Road, referring to the distance from the village amenities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. I will ask officers to respond when they present the report. Thank you.
Okay, fine.
Try to make your way back. Okay, we have no further speakers. We'll go to agenda item 6, A1, which is the Tendred District Local Plan Review, Preferred Option Draft. This is on pages 25 to 444, with the council report ending on page 91. Mr. Woods will present the report, or Mr. Guyver will be the double act. And I would like to take this opportunity to commend the team for the excellent job they've done in compiling the draft in such a tight period of time from when we met last on the 8th of December. I'm not sure we did with Christmas, but I'm sure that you didn't do the same as the rest of us. So well done for getting the draft in front of us and to the public as well. I do hope that all members have received the complete suite of papers that were delivered by courier. They consist of the main preferred option draft, the integrated sustainability appraisal, appendix B1 and B2, the habitat regulation assessment, which is a legal requirement that all members must be provided with a copy of it, and a complete set of maps that show all the important housing allocation sites, mostly in dark pink, as well as other equally important information relevant to each one of the maps. Before I hand over to Paul and Gary, I'd just like to comment on the excellent print quality of the maps. I think they're extremely clear and very, very sharp. I don't remember it being as good as that before, so well done for that. The one detail you might have spotted that in the map, the allocation for, there's no allocation for Ardwill Elmstead because of the already had allocated site in the garden community. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you guys, and if you could pick up the comments from Mr. Morris, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Chairman. Good evening, councillors. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We now approach the next important stage of the local plan review process, which is public consultation on the first draft proper of the updated local plan, the preferred options draft, where for the first time we're able to present councillors with a full set of detailed planning policies and associated maps, which Paul will speak about shortly. But more than ever before, there's an urgency in proceeding through the remaining stages of what's a statutory process. Knowing full well that many of the policies and proposals in this draft plan will not be popular and will raise lots of questions and objections that we need to be ready to respond to. And this is because we're bringing forward this draft local plan under the most challenging of circumstances, not least of which is the near doubling of our housing requirement, very much against the Council's wishes, following the government's decision to impose mandatory house building targets. Now, these are targets that from Monday will increase our requirement from what has been an achievable 550 homes a year to a rather ambitious and difficult to conceive 1,063 homes a year, literally overnight, with no mechanism anymore to argue against such a change. This change has forced us to look at radical options for future growth that we wouldn't have otherwise needed to consider. And it pushes us into a position by which next week it will not be possible to demonstrate a 5-year supply of deliverable housing land, adding to the urgency in which we need to progress this new plan through the next stages of the process. At our last meeting on the 8th of December, and in previous meetings, we've covered at length the implications of the government's new house building targets, the spatial strategy options, and the locations and sites to be included in the draft local plan for housing, mixed use and employment development. And the committee's resolution from the 8th of December in respect of sites is duly reflected in the preferred options draft before you tonight. And so tonight the focus is on the policies and the maps that will form the preferred options draft, and making a recommendation to next week's meeting of full council to take the draft local plan out to consultation, so that our residents and other interested parties get the opportunity to have their say, and so we can take their comments into account in drawing up a final version of the plan later on in the year, which itself will be the subject of a further round of consultation before it's submitted to the Secretary of State before the end of this year. And herein lies another challenge. If we fail to complete 2 rounds of consultation and submit the plan to the Secretary of State before the end of this year, we'll be caught by a change in the planning system, requiring a very different style of local plan, prepared following a very different process, which will put us back to the start line, extend the period of vulnerability to speculative housing proposals, and make it unlikely that we will adopt a new local plan before local government reorganisation takes place. And why is that important? Well, with devolution and LGR on the horizon, from April 2028, Tendring District Council will be no more. And so this will likely be the last local plan this council produces before planning powers pass to the Mayoral Authority for Greater Essex in respect of sub-regional strategic planning, and to the future Unitary Authority covering a wider geography in respect of local plans and planning decisions. We objected to the house building targets when they were consulted upon, but those have been forced upon us, and our neighbouring councils objected to. But we know that we need to comply with these requirements. And so we bring forward some of these proposals reluctantly, knowing that for understandable reasons, not everyone will like what we're having to do. But this really could be Tendring District Council's last opportunity to set out the long-term vision for growth in our area and make sure we put what matters to Tendring and its communities firmly on the agenda for the future Mayor and the future Unitary Council when they take over in a couple of years' time. So with that in mind, before I hand over to Paul to talk about some of the detail, if we can take a glance at the recommendations on page 32, and item B in particular, where the committee is invited to recommend to full council that the draft local plan, along with the accompanying sustainability appraisal and habitat regulation assessment, which are a legal requirement, are published for consultation, along with all the other evidence-based studies that have informed the local plan review to date. And likewise, Chairman, I must congratulate Paul Woods and his team for pulling together the draft local plan within such a challenging timescale, and I'm sure others will agree it's a really good document, but it is, as it says on the front cover, a draft. It's not the finished article by any means. And whilst there may be differences of opinion, I'm sure amongst us all, on some of the specific policies, proposals or sections of the document, the process of consultation and examination is designed to enable people to have their say, and for the technical evidence to be updated, reviewed and added to in order to inform future decisions around changes and refinements to the plan in due course. And the comments from Mr. Morris, thank you, duly noted. And whilst it is the sort of committee's prerogative to request further amendments to the draft plan, if it so wishes, it would be my advice to proceed to consultation and for the responses to that consultation to be considered in the round when coming to a view on changes to be made for the next version of the plan later on in the year. But that's a matter for councillors to consider tonight, and I can offer further advice as necessary. But of course, councillors will recall the changes that were made to the draft plan in terms of the officer recommendations around Great Bentley. The decision was taken having received representations from the floor from Great Bentley Parish Council itself. I'm not recommending that we necessarily revisit that because we complied with the resolution of the committee last time round to bring forward a draft local plan with the chosen sites within it. And my advice would be that those residents and landowners that disagree with the decision that's been taken do have the opportunity through the formal consultation period to make those concerns known and for us to consider those as we move into the next stage of the process. So now I'm going to invite Paul to run through some of the key aspects of the draft local plan and the consultation process. Paul, thank you.
You, Gary.
Thank you, and good evening, members. One of the key messages through the local plan review, and one that was set out in the guiding principles that the committee agreed in December 2023, was that this is a review and an update of the local plan rather than a fundamental rewrite. And so we've sought to achieve consistency and familiarity as far as possible, both in the content and structure of the document and in the presentation and the formatting. The updated local plan includes a grand total of 85 policies. There are 38 policies being carried forward from the existing local plan, broadly unchanged, because having reviewed them, we've reached the view that they remain relevant and up to date. 15 policies have been updated or changed more substantially, either to reflect the new spatial strategy and the significant number of new homes that we're required to plan for, to reflect changes in national policy requirements, or because of new best practice or other advice that we've received from our partners. There are 32 brand new policies, 18 of which relate to new housing sites agreed by the committee in December, and 14 are other policy requirements that are being introduced. And finally, 13 policies have been deleted from the adopted local plan, and this is largely because they're no longer required, such as sites that have been fully built out and so don't need their own policy anymore, or policies from the old Section 1 plan that have been incorporated elsewhere into the updated local plan. So turning to the draft local plan itself, policies that were in the adopted local plan were shown with a purple background, and we've kept this style, but we're now showing new policies with a green background, and they're identified as new policies within the policy title. And then for those policies where there have been revisions or updates, the new or changed text is shown with green highlighting to match the new policies, so that members, but also members of the public and other consultees, will be able to see where the changes have occurred from the adopted local plan to the new proposed draft of the updated local plan. And there's a new requirement in the NPPF that local plans must make it clear which policies are considered strategic in their scope and which are non-strategic. And this doesn't create a two-tier system of which policies are more important or less important. All of the policies, once adopted, will form part of the development plan and be used for determining planning applications. But it does help create a distinction between policies that address strategic priorities for the district, including any cross-boundary issues like the garden community, and policies that are more local in nature, such as town centre policies and location-specific policies like Thorpe Maltings. And so each policy now, in the title, will state if it's a strategic policy or a non-strategic policy. And then the maps, which were presented in a separate bundle of papers. They're formatted in the same style as the existing local plan, broadly at the same scale and use the same colours and themes for the different layers. The pack that you received with your agenda were all printed at A3, but when the plan is published for consultation, many of the smaller villages will be at A4, and the maps that show the whole district split into thirds will be printed at a larger scale at A1, so they're much clearer to interrogate. And we're really lucky to have the expertise in the council to help us prepare these maps, and the team have worked really hard to get everything ready for this meeting and for the upcoming consultation. And so turning to the policies themselves, first I'll look at the new policies that we're introducing in the updated local plan. Firstly, there are 3 new policies around net zero carbon within the Protected Places chapter, and they begin at page 242 of your agenda. And we're fortunate to have had a lot of support from our colleagues at Essex County Council who have developed these policies, and they're being picked up in local plans across Essex. We've got our colleague Adam Deerham here from the Climate and Planning Unit at Essex County Council to support us if there's any technical questions around these policies and how they could be implemented. The policies themselves set out clear expectations for new homes and buildings to be ultra energy efficient, with low energy heating, fossil-free fuel, high fabric performance and on-site renewable energy generation. There's a separate policy about embodied carbon, which means looking not only at how the buildings perform when they're occupied, but also the carbon impact of the materials themselves and the construction process, as well as a policy about renewable energy installations. And these are very high standards, and the team at Essex are really at the cutting edge of what planning can achieve in terms of responding to climate change. And versions of these policies are included in the adopted DPD for the garden community. And just in the last few days, Uttlesford's local plan has been found sound by a planning inspector with these policies included. Alongside the net zero carbon policies, there's new at page 234 of your agenda. Require new homes to be designed to use no more than 100 litres of water per person per day, recognising the fact that we live in a water-stressed area and going beyond the requirements in the most up-to-date building regulations. And both the water and energy efficiency policies are important for a number of reasons, because they help address the climate impacts of energy generation and water use, but also because these measures have an impact on infrastructure, because reducing energy demand places less strain on the energy network, which we know is under pressure at the moment with the number of NSIPs that are being proposed within the district. And lower water use means there'll be less pressure on water recycling centres close to new developments. And perhaps most tangibly to our residents, these higher standards help ensure that new homes are more economical and affordable to run and to live in, with cheaper electricity and cheaper water bills for future occupiers. Turning to biodiversity net gain, there is a new policy on page 231 of your agenda, which had provisionally been agreed by the Cabinet in 2024, and which proposes to increase the requirement for BNG beyond the national minimum of 10% up to 20% for most developments once the plan is adopted, which will require development to make a positive impact on our local environment. And this is another policy in which we're becoming consistent with other authorities across Essex, and there's been a real drive across the county to increase the standards in our environmental policies. On page 131, there's a new policy on hot food takeaway, which introduces stronger controls on the location of takeaways near schools, playgrounds and other sensitive places where children tend to gather, and seeks to avoid an over-concentration of takeaways in town centres. And this directly supports the health and well-being objectives that the local plan is seeking to deliver. There's a number of site or location-specific policies being proposed in the updated local plan. There's a policy for Walton Mere to support regeneration-based development taking place in that part of the town. In St Osyth Village Centre, supporting the delivery of a new car park to serve the village centre and an appropriate amount of housing to help fund it. At St Osyth Priory to support the restoration work going on there and setting parameters for any future enabling development. And at Thorpe Maltings, looking to create conditions where the building and its environment can be restored and the area around the station regenerated. And of course, the large number of new policies around our housing and mixed-use allocations, the largest of which have their own site-specific policies in the Delivering Places chapter. Beyond the new policies, many policies have notable changes or updates. The policies around housing growth, and particularly the settlement hierarchy and settlement boundaries, have been updated to reflect the new spatial strategy and to strengthen wording around development outside settlement boundaries. There are new settlement boundaries proposed in a number of locations across the district. Point Clear at St Osyth to reflect the size of the population there and create a clearer understanding of where the limits to development are. Tendring Heath to reflect the growth that's already happened there and the new allocation being proposed at the old haulage depot. At Landswood to reflect the designation in the Elmstead Neighbourhood Plan and to keep its distinction and its separation from Elmstead Market Village. And at Fox Street, in recognition of the area's unique position right on the edge of Colchester and close to the garden community. And of course there are the new proposals for garden villages at Hare Green and at Horsley Cross, which are referenced in the settlement hierarchy and have their own map showing the broad location for those developments. Policy HP1 on page 135 of your agenda talks about improving health and well-being, and it's been specifically updated in close collaboration with our health colleagues at the NHS and at Essex County Council. And it seeks to ensure that new developments are places that help people to live healthy and active lifestyles. And there's a stronger narrative around how new health services could be delivered, including the use of multi-use community hubs and securing developer contributions. In the same chapter, Policy HP5 on page 145 of the agenda has been updated in collaboration with colleagues in the Open Spaces team, setting higher expectations for open space and new developments, especially on our strategic sites, and ensuring that open space that is secured is of a standard and a size that's compatible with the Council's open spaces strategy. The threshold for acquiring on-site open space has been increased from 1.5 hectares to 3 hectares to make sure that the open spaces we do secure are larger and more usable. And there's a new sliding scale requiring that developments at the smaller end deliver 10% of their site area as open space, up to 40% on larger developments of more than 70 hectares. The requirements around the layout and design of new developments have also been strengthened in a number of policies through the plan, seeking to make sure new developments create healthy, green places for people to live in, tying in with national guidance and local guidance in the Essex Design Guide. And the Gypsy and Traveller Sites policy has been updated in light of the most recent evidence on current and future demand. The Gypsy and Traveller Accommodation Assessment, GTAA, which is a fundamental piece of evidence that sits behind the local plan, projects a need for an additional 38 pitches in the period up to 2042. Although some of this need can be met through allocations at the garden community and at new provision at the garden villages, which are suitably located close to the strategic road network, the short-term need also needs to be addressed. And so the policy on page 172 sets out the expectation that for the short term, the two largest established sites in the district, Woodfield Bungalow in Great Bentley and Gutteridge Hall Lane in Wheeley, might be able to accommodate proportionate levels of expansion, and proposes that a focused call for sites consultation be undertaken to identify the extent of available land in these locations and determine its suitability for allocation in the next draft of the local plan. And in the Connected Places chapter, policies have been updated to ensure a stronger alignment with national policy and Essex County Council strategies, to establish clear expectations around encouraging the use of active travel and public transport, and recognising the need for appropriate lorry parking facilities in the future associated with port expansion at Harwich. The Strategic Green Gaps policy hasn't changed significantly, but there are proposed additions to the designations which are shown on the maps, where new allocations or changes in circumstances suggest that additional protection may be necessary. Key examples include to the west of the strategic mixed-use allocation proposed at Dovercourt, between the proposed housing allocation at Kirby Cross and the village of Kirby Le Soken to the north, between Little Clacton and Wheeley Heath, where recent developments have begun to reduce separation between the two settlements, and around the northern and western edge of Elmstead Market to maintain separation from the Tendring Colchester Borders garden community. And throughout the plan, strong links have been made with the Essex Local Nature Recovery Strategy, requiring developers to consider the strategies and proposals in that document and as they develop their plans, and making specific links within our site-specific policies for new housing and mixed-use developments to the strategy and to the opportunities around various sites. One of the key tests that the local plan must pass when it reaches examination in 2027 is whether it's deliverable. And that doesn't just mean whether the land is available or whether the sites are technically suitable. It also means whether development in Tendring can realistically be built to the standards we're proposing, with all the infrastructure needed, and still remain viable in today's market. And to help us understand this, we've worked closely with specialist consultants at HDH Planning, who have tested all of the policies in the plan against the most up-to-date build costs and sales values, and the new regulatory requirements that developments must meet. This includes the zero carbon policies that we've spoken about, the more stringent water efficiency requirements, and the proposal for 20% biodiversity net gain, all of which are really important to create genuinely sustainable new communities, but which do add a cost to development. And the evidence is clear that if we kept affordable housing at 30%, then development in most parts of the district would not be viable. And if the local plan isn't viable, it's not deliverable, and it can't be found sound at examination. And so that's why the draft plan proposes to reduce on-site affordable housing requirements to 20%, and the updated policy can be seen on page 163 on the agenda. It's a pragmatic adjustment that allows us to deliver the higher climate, water and biodiversity standards and still secure a meaningful contribution and a reliable supply of affordable homes. And crucially, it's not a drop in our ambition for affordable housing in the district. Because of the new mandatory housing target that Gary's spoken about, Tendring now has to plan for 1,063 homes a year. So even at 20% affordable housing, that still equates to around 3,600 new affordable homes over the plan period. Whereas under the current local plan target of 550 homes a year and a 30% requirement over 17 years, it would be around 2,800 new affordable homes. So even with the changes in the affordable housing policy, we're still looking at potentially another 800 new affordable homes in comparison. Of course, viability plays a factor on a site-by-site basis too, and in some developments they're too small to contribute to affordable housing, but overall the local plan is still seeking to deliver a greater number of affordable homes across the district. And crucially, this does demonstrate that the other policy requirements through the local plan are viable, they are deliverable. And crucially, for the largest strategic developments in the plan, so that's the garden community, as well as the new garden villages at Hare Green and Horsley Cross, the viability evidence shows that 30% affordable housing is still achievable alongside these new policy requirements. And so for those specific sites, the requirement for 30% affordable housing has been retained in their own policies. And it's been very much a whistle-stop tour of the updated local plan, and we intend to leave sufficient time for members to ask questions and to discuss in detail. And so I'll finish by talking briefly about the consultation. The formal element of the consultation is the documents themselves, the draft local plan and the maps, the sustainability appraisal, and the habitats regulation assessment. The documents will be made available at libraries across the district and at the town hall for those who want to read hard copies, and online for those who find it more convenient to access them in those ways. We'll encourage as many people as possible to respond online as we have done previously, where you'll be able to click on individual policies and comment on them directly. This kind of response is much more manageable for officers to read and respond to compared to reading long handwritten letters. We will make paper forms available for offline responses, and of course those who do choose to write a letter or an email will still have their comments considered and given just as much weight as any of the other methods. But in addition to formal responses, we'll again be proposing to hold a series of in-person drop-in exhibitions across the district, so that people have an opportunity to come along and see the proposals in person and discuss any questions they have with planning officers. We'll still be encouraging people at those events to submit formal reps, but these events were invaluable during the Issues and Options consultation, helping people understand the local plan and clearing up any misconceptions before they write in. All of the publicity around the consultation will include our contact details, so those who can't attend an event can still phone and speak to a member of the planning policy team or arrange a meeting. And the aim is to ensure that nobody's excluded from the consultation, regardless of their lifestyle, their routine, where they're based within the district. As we did in the lead up to the Issues and Options consultation last year, we've been engaging with town and parish councils, making sure that they fully understand the proposals and can make the most effective contributions to the consultation process when they submit their representations. The formal consultation needs to run for a period of 6 weeks, and we're proposing that it could run from February into March. And afterwards, we'll consider every representation we receive and take them into account when making changes to and preparing the next draft of the local plan. And the aim is to bring that final draft of the plan back to members later in the summer, ready for consultation in the autumn, and then submission by the government's deadline at the end of the year. So the recommendation tonight can be found on page 32 of your agenda, and it's in 4 parts. It's recommended that the Planning Policy and Local Plan Committee notes the contents of this report, explaining how the Tender and District Local Plan Preferred Options draft has been developed, having regard to the direction given and decisions taken by the committee at previous meetings, feedback from the public consultation on issues and options carried out in the spring of 2025 and the emerging evidence base, as well as the requirements of national planning policy. B, having considered the Tender and District Local Plan Preferred Options draft at Appendix 1, agrees to recommend to full council that it be approved for 6 weeks public consultation alongside the related sustainability appraisal at Appendix 2, Habitats Regulation Assessment Appendix 3, and other supporting evidence, including those listed as background documents in accordance with Regulation 18 of the Town and Country Planning Local Planning England Regulations 2012 as amended, and Regulation 13 of the Environmental Assessment of Plans and Programme Regulations. C, recommends to full council that delegated authority be given to the Corporate Director for Planning and Community in consultation with the Chairman of the Planning Policy and Local Plan Committee to make corrections, if necessary, to address any minor formatting, mapping, typographical, grammatical or factual errors within the aforementioned draft plan in Appendix 1 in the event that any are discovered before the consultation commences. And finally at D, notes that if or when the local plan preferred options draft is agreed by full council to be published for consultation, its policies and proposals can be taken into account in the determination of planning applications, alongside those of the current adopted local plan, with weight afforded to the emerging policies in accordance with the guidance set out in the National Planning Policy Framework. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Gary and Paul, for your presentation. Ms. Hastings, do you want to come in?
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that with Councillor Andy Baker's not being here this evening for being unwell, the Constitution actually requires the committee to refer this to full council following consultation with Cabinet, and we've delegated the ability for that consultation to be undertaken with Councillor Baker as the portfolio holder for housing and planning, which he normally does in the meeting. So because he's not here this evening, I would, if possible, like recommendation B just to be amended slightly so that it says, having considered the tendering district local plan preferred options draft Appendix 1, agrees to recommend to full council following consultation with the leader that it be approved for 6 weeks. Now, I know the leader is here this evening, but he is here as a member of the committee this evening. So I would just like that to be sort of incorporated into the recommendation. So following the meeting, I can get that formal consultation from the leader. So sorry, just a little technical point that I've needed to think about because Councillor Baker is unwell. But I know he fully supports it.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Hastings, and I'm sure that the leader will have more than one hat to wear, and following the meeting I'm sure he'll be very open to step into Councillor Baker's shoes. Any comments from Councillor Stevens?
I'm more than happy with that recommendation, Chairman, and obviously I'll have another meeting after this meeting.
Thank you very much. Before I go to members, I just really wanted to reiterate something that Gary said. I just really wanted to point out that the task that we have is enormous. To deliver, to make land available to build 1,063 new homes per year, it's never been done here before. The biggest delivery of homes that we've had has been 911, And that was when there was an onslaught of application that when the tilted balance was actually in place. So this is not us who are chosen to go down that path. This has been forced upon us. As Gary said, he's not going to please everyone. He's not going to please some members. He's not going to please some developers who know how the land allocated. He won't please some of the residents because of this. But it is, I just really wanted to stress the fact that it is not the council that is pushing for this, but it is a government that's mandated this upon us and changed the course of the local plan work that we undertook. We had to start more or less from scratch again. So without further ado, I'll go to members. Any Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. Well done. How you can produce anything like this, I will never know, but it's a really good document, and well done for all your hard work. And thank you to Gary, who came along to Brightlingsea Town Council and explained Brightlingsea situation and agreed to take comments from Brightlingsea, which I did email over to him, but I have got them here as well. So the main one is, of course, based on SAH4, the proposed 300 homes in Sabsons Road. If you've got over the excess numbers for housing as stated, why can't the Brightlingsea site be removed? It goes against all the principles for sites: infrastructure poor, road access extremely poor, one road in and out, 20 minutes to drive a quarter of a mile, traffic numbers exceeding the amount of movement predicted at Thorrington Cross, causing untold congestion, roads being blocked, cutting Brightlingsea off. But all of this past a grade 1 listed building, which is our biggest concern. Nowhere near railway stations, public transport, dismal, no vacancies in schools, dentists, doctors, maternity homes, refusing admissions, and at the other end we have nowhere to bury our residents. Perhaps any development could have added to, particularly big developments, that burial grounds must become part of the infrastructure. The site's been refused permission in the past over wildlife surveys, bats, curlews, potential flooding and extra traffic movement. We don't oppose some growth, but we have to take into consideration the holiday park that already has permission for 5 houses, 36 retirement apartments and up to 104 units, equating to thousands more vehicle movements, as well as the new Robinson Road sites that we've already had. What we're asking, and don't get me wrong, because I'm supporting this all the way, because we do need all of Brightlingsea residents' feedback on this. But what we would rather do is be working on the smaller sites that were submitted. And again, as I bring up at most meetings, particularly the Well House site, Vicarage Field or Oaklands, Oakwood, that, you know, maybe we could revisit. And just on another point, on Appendix B1, page 709, Brightlingsea employment site, you have 18 Victoria places being empty. It's Baldwin's department store and they've been trading for over 2 years. We don't have an empty retail unit. Also, we have 4 employment sites in Brightlingsea and not the 3 that were listed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Who wants to respond?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Chapman. And I agree it was a really good meeting with the Town Council. And what I've been trying to do, and will continue to do as well, is meet with town and parish councils, because that local insight is invaluable in understanding how our district operates, what matters to people. So as well as there being a formal public consultation for representations that were to be made, we still value the opportunity to speak to our town and parish councils to understand their concerns. In terms of the allocation of land at Brightlingsea, and it really does reflect quite strongly some of the concerns that were raised by Mr. Court when he spoke at the last meeting, and we know that we have a representation that's been submitted for us to consider. We are quite sympathetic to the views expressed in Brightlingsea, and historically we have always tried to keep the level of development in that location to a minimum in recognition of some of its unique constraints in terms of the environment and the one road in, one road out scenario, which is quite unique to the area. But the amount of housing that's required is such that we have had to look at opportunities for development, and all parts of the district have had to play a role in accommodating some of that growth. In respect of the comment that there is over provision in the local plan already, and if a site was removed, we would still have the numbers in there to deliver it. It's a good point, and yes, if 300 homes were removed from the plan, we still have an over provision within the plan. But that over provision is important because there's a general expectation that you don't plan just up to the level of development that's required, that you incorporate some contingency into the figures, because in reality, not everything happens in the way that you expect it to happen. And therefore, by over-allocating by a sensible level, you include some contingency in the numbers and guard against the possibility that sites just don't come forward in the way that you expect. So if we take a site out, we're reducing the amount of contingency. And in my experience of local plans being examined, landowners and developers in particular make a big case around including enough contingency, because in reality, sites don't always come forward in the way expected. So we need to think about the level of contingency and over-allocation whenever we're considering whether sites should stay in or come out. What I would say, though, about that is that as a general rule of thumb, there's no specific percentage of over-allocation that you're supposed to provide for. Generally, somewhere between 5 and 10% is what inspectors look to see, but it will be different from place to place depending on the situation. And one of the things that I would point out is that within the figures, we are relying on a windfall estimate of development coming forward, and very often when plans are examined, those windfall estimates are scrutinised. So if you can demonstrate you've included contingency, you're less likely to come under that kind of scrutiny and have your figures chucked out by the inspector. And also we are relying on the two major garden villages coming forward part way through the plan period and delivering not all, but some of the development up to 2042. Now there's a lot of water to go over before we get to a point where we have a clear position on the deliverability of those garden villages, a number of years that would have to be spent in the planning process, like we have with the garden community on the borders of Colchester. And because we are relying on some longer term developments where the future is perhaps less certain than for some of the smaller developments, and because we are relying on a windfall allowance within those figures, I would warn against watering down that contingency level. What I would say is that the best way for those concerns about sites to be made, and for us to consider the kind of things that the Town Council has mentioned about exploring whether there are alternative opportunities on smaller sites, is by making representations through the formal consultation, and my advice would be to proceed to consultation on those grounds. And the cumulative impact of development is a consideration, particularly on highways and transport as well. So the developments that we already know about in a place like Brightlingsea, like the holiday park development, are taken into account in the transport modelling. And what I'd also say, in terms of any omissions or errors that have been spotted in the sustainability appraisal or habitat regulation assessment, they're going out to consultation as well as part of the formal process, and we can explore whether any changes or corrections could be made through the formal process.
Thank you, Gary. I think it was very clear, concise response. You've got some homework to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd echo the comments from Councillor Chapman. I support what Councillor Chapman just said in terms of the road in out of Brightsea, because if you go down the hill from Brightsea, it becomes Thorrington, which is my patch, and to go to Thorrington Cross, it does take a while to get out of there. It does queue back as far as the mill at Thorrington, so I echo those comments there. I just want to ask a question in reference to the maps, so that I know you've identified local green spaces in the maps, but I've noticed there's some areas of open green space that hasn't been allocated, and I was wondering, is there a chance that possibly I can sit down with you and not tonight but another day to point out the areas of rural communities that I'm aware of where it's got open space that's not on the maps, and perhaps it may be a good idea if I come and point out those areas in question. In terms of water conservation, I'm delighted that it's a new policy on water conservation, but I've read that policy and I was wondering whether there's anything regarding water pressure. I know there's water conservation and the supply of water, but in terms of the pressure, I think that's key as well, because if you've got low water pressure, then it's going to affect people's lives in their homes. I understand, Mr. Woods, you mentioned about reduction from 30% to 20% of houses of 10 and more. I have mixed views on that, because I understand for smaller developments, small hamlets of 10, 12 houses, 30% and reducing that 20%, but then it goes up to say 100 and 200 houses that may not be in the garden communities that are outside that. I would prefer it if that was still 30% rather than 20% on large scale developments that are not part of the garden community. I know the garden communities have got 30%, you're keeping them, but outside that, I would like to have seen maybe 30%, because there are a lot of individuals that wish to move to our district that may not necessarily be able to afford to purchase properties within our borders, and I think reducing that may actually cause problems for future residents of our district. I may come back on some other things, but I'll wait to have what other councillors say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Do you want to respond to that, Gary?
Thank you very much, Councillor Scott, and for echoing the concerns about Brightsea, which we will be looking at through the responses to the consultation for sure, because we expect that there will be a theme in terms of responses that we need to look at. In terms of green spaces, open spaces shown on the maps, the starting point for Paul and his team has been what is shown in the local plan that exists, so the existing local plan. Remembering that that plan was only examined about 4 years ago and found to be sound. There was quite a long discussion about what should go in as open space and what shouldn't. Quite a lot of examination time was spent up looking at that. But of course, very happy to meet with you, Councillor Scott, to discuss your thoughts on what else might need to go in. And of course, there will be the opportunity to make representations through the formal consultation. So I'm not suggesting that any changes to the document are made now, but we have time to look at that to make sure that everything is covered. I'll probably ask Paul to comment on the water conservation and water pressure side of things. But on affordable housing, what I would say about that is that Mr. Woods was right in his presentation that some of the factors that have led us to recommend a reduction to from 30 to 20% affordable housing, not for all sites, but for a large proportion of them, is the new standards around water efficiency, energy efficiency, and biodiversity net gain. But there are other more natural sort of market factors that have gone into that consideration as well. The value of property and the cost of construction, which, and in terms of value of property, that can vary considerably from place to place in the district. And the evidence that we have on viability shows that 30% is not achievable in all areas. 20% is achievable in most areas. And for those, only for those larger garden village developments where you're building in the thousands, can you achieve the economies of scale which enables 30% to be achieved alongside all of those other requirements. Although those garden villages have challenges in their own right in terms of strategic infrastructure that will need to support them coming forward. I know there's a preference to see as much affordable housing as we can get, but the reality of the situation is if you set an affordable housing percentage that's not viable, the development won't happen. And the old adage of 20% of something is better than 30% of nothing is one that I would use for this particular scenario. There will be people that could make representations on the plan that will challenge the viability assumptions in here, and through the formal process there will be the opportunity to review that situation, but the recommendation as it stands at the moment is that 20% is the sweet spot in terms of affordable housing for the majority of developments. Mr. Woods, I don't know if you had anything to say about
Paul, before you come in, I just wanted to bring in Mrs. Hastings.
Thank you. And picking up on the affordable housing and the percentage figures, this is where Tendring District Council as a local authority has lots of different hats. And obviously this is the local plan that we're looking at. And with the local plan, it works within its own framework, and there's lots and lots of things to consider. And all of which I wouldn't even, try to go into at all, or even I'd be using the wrong terminology. But with regards to affordable housing, it is sort of perfectly acceptable for the council being responsible for a housing strategy for the district to aspire still to 30%. There's nothing wrong with that. And I know that within the Cabinet's housing strategy, which is being recommended onto full council, that's what it says. So that is still the aspiration of this council. What will have to happen is once the local plan has gone out for consultation, if there are any amendments to it, picking up on any of the points made, it may be, and then that goes forward for approval, and found sound, etc. It could be then that the council has to reflect on its housing strategy and think, are we going for too high by going at 30%? But this is the jigsaw of local government. It's forever moving. So it's perfectly okay to have different views, and they don't have to all align at this stage.
Thank you, Ms. Hastings. Paul, do you want to pick up the water issue?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Policy PPL5 that deals with water conservation and drainage and sewerage, it focuses specifically on water use, as you identified, and the environmental impacts of inefficient water use in new homes. But it focuses largely on what developers can do through new buildings to reduce the amount of water that people need to use in their day-to-day lives. And most importantly, it's come about through evidence produced through our water cycle study. And our consultants that undertook that work have been in consultation with Affinity Water and Anglian Water to understand exactly what the pressures are within our district to reach a recommendation for the most suitable level, taking into account other considerations such as viability and deliverability as well. And that work hasn't raised an issue around water pressure that they've recommended we address through the local plan. But water pressure is covered by building regulations, and so there is a minimum water pressure that new homes will need to be provided with. But I think ultimately that's something that sort of is much better addressed with the water companies themselves and the developers, and to be covered by building regulations rather than having a very bespoke policy within the local plan.
Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm not going to talk about the different things that are going to happen in my parish. They're up for grabs as soon as we get going in the 6 weeks consultation. So I'm not going to touch those now. But I'd like to add my thanks to the amount of work that the department has done. We were duty bound to do a 5-year review of the existing local plan. That's how it should have been if we hadn't had the intervention by the government to say that we've got to double the amount of houses we're going to do. If we hadn't had the alterations to the NPPF, which seems to vary daily, I think, from what I read in the paper, the number of rules that have been changed. And also, of course, to add, which members of the public might not quite understand, the LGR review, which means in 2 years' time there won't be a district council. And so we're getting ready now to make sure that, in fact, we've got a plan, and the new organisation, whatever it might be, will have to look at what tendering wants because it's in our local plan. So putting it together, it makes me think that what a marvellous job they have done. And we've got to get this through. There are, as we've outlined, there are a lot in there of things that various people will like. There are probably equally a lot of things in there which the general public won't like. That is a standard thing that we expect in planning. But this 6 weeks consultation, we've got to get the members of the public really to understand that they must comment on it. And so I don't know quite how we're going to publicise it, but we've got to do it. This is going to be their last chance, as been stressed earlier, to get this local plan in place before the local government review and reorganisation takes place. It is so important that we get that message out, that those people who like the plan, those people who don't like the plan, let us know why they don't like the plan, just as much as those people that do like the plan. It's so important. So there will be more discussion, Chairman, but when we get round to final it, I'm more than happy to move the recommendation with the slight revision that our solicitors put in. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't think it was a question or anything for the officers to come back with unless they wish to do so. But I want to bring Mrs. Hastings back again.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to sort of echo the comments really that Councillor White just made in relation to the fact that as district councillors, you are all here to you do want to represent your ward area. You know, you want to do the best for your ward. But in this instance, in this room, it's about making a decision which is best for the whole of the district. And as you quite rightly say, Councillor White, then once it goes out to consultation, that's when the ward councillors can then really help with regards to the consultation and getting the responses in. So I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't just highlight that this evening you're here to see what's best for the whole of the district. And whilst tendering district council might not be here in 28, the district will still be here. So, and the residents will be, and the land will be. So we've still got to do the very best for the district going forward.
Thank you very much for reminding us all, Ms. Hastings. Paul, do you want to come back?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to pick up on one of the points that Councillor White made was around publicising the consultation, because you're right, it's so important that we make sure that residents know the consultation is happening and understand how they can engage. And we found when we ran the Issues and Options consultation last year that one of the most effective ways of reaching large numbers of people was through social media. the council's social media channels posted regular updates about the consultation and reminders about the events. What we actually found was that people sharing those posts and posts from the local press as well on their own pages and in their own groups, it drew a lot of attention to the consultation, and people shared their views online in the comment section, but it did mean that people were aware of the events and people came along because they'd heard about it online. So that was really valuable. But that only reaches part of the population, those that are online and engaging. We release press releases to ensure that all the local press are able to run articles about the consultation, and the Gazette in Clacton and the local papers in Harwich, Manningtree and around the district have been really reliable actually in picking up the stories about the consultations we run for the local plan and making sure that the information is available. We've got quite a robust database now of people who have registered to be notified when the consultations start. And so at the beginning of the consultation, we send hundreds of emails and letters out to let people know that the consultation starts now, the events are happening in these dates and places, and this is how you respond. So those are some of the key ways that we as the council can advertise the consultation. But what was really useful last time round was the support of parish and town councils and of local councillors. And what we did last time and intend to do again this time is produce posters and flyers that we can either print and send out to the parishes and town councils and to our own councillors, or provide by email in a format that's easy to print, to photocopy. And a lot of councillors did then go down their high streets and put them up in shops and made sure that the word got out in that way. So we will be looking for support again from the local parish and town councils, from ward members. And the SCI, the Council Statement of Community Involvement, sets out a raft of other ways that we seek to engage with people, working with local voluntary groups. So CVST, Community Voluntary Services Tendering, are really keen to work with us to help get the word out there. We'll be engaging with them. We approached local secondary schools and offered to run events or to go and speak to their students in line with the SCI. And although no one took us up on that offer last time, it could be that now there's some more detail and some more meat on the bones. That might be something that they ask us to do, and we can then reach a different demographic, a different group of people in the district. So it's really important that we reach as many people as we can, and the support that councillors and local councils can give is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Did you want to come back, Councillor White? Thank you very much. Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. I haven't actually got a question. It's more of a statement, really. So I'm going to jump on the bandwagon. Well done. Really good report. And the reason for the audience and for anybody who's going to watch is I opted, thankfully, to take a digital copy of this. And it's sitting here saying 1,358 pages. So that shows the sheer magnitude of the work that's gone into that. And that's the final document, not anything that was put together before we got to that final document, before it becomes the draft. And it wasn't long ago, I think this committee sat here and we were discussing 5 options, and then the government made the decision and those options became one and came all together. So I don't think it's really one of these things where it's sort of an evolving platform that currently you guys have done a great job to deliver us to where we are. I've heard a few councillors, and we heard it in the previous meeting, vying for their area and everything else. And I think tonight it's one of those things that, having gone through the process a few years back when we didn't have a local plan, seeing the speculative development, seeing how outraged some of the local parish and town councils were, this has a different feel to it. This has a more, we understand the problem from the towns and parish councils, and they're engaging with us to try and resolve those problems. And we might not get it right on every single one, but we have started to fix some of those, what we think are inequalities. And it isn't that we're fixed to what we have in front of us, but we are in listening mode at the moment. That's what the consultation is all about. So I just wanted to echo thank you to Paul and Gary. It's been a very short time window of what we're doing, and as a cabinet, I'm already happy with this. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. I've got no further speakers. I just really wanted to make a comment. I welcome quite a lot of the new policies that have been listed on there. I shall make my responses through the consultation. The one thing I really wanted to raise here tonight is the biodiversity net gain. As a very long-standing county council, I've always supported policies of the county council and directive and lead by examples. I feel the increasing from 10 to 20% by the Western again might cause a barrier to house deliveries. Given the fact that we have a very hard task ahead of us to provide, as I mentioned before, something that we never ever delivered in our whole existence. I wouldn't want to see by the Western again obligation to be a barrier to house delivery. Again, I will make my own representation, and I'm sure many other people will, because I'm already picking up quite a lot of discontent out there. So I'd just like to understand what your thoughts are on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, you're right. The requirement for 20% BNG is a policy that's been championed by Essex County Council, and as you say, sort of leading by example. It's a policy that we've had some conversations with our viability consultants about to help us understand the impact on deliverability when it comes to the viability of new developments. The clear message is that where BNG can be delivered on site, which is the first option under legislation, it needs to be delivered on site first, and only if it can't be, can you then be looking at credits and delivering it elsewhere. If 20% BNG is delivered on site, the financial implications are minimal compared to 10% biodiversity net gain. So the uplift from 10 to 20% has negligible impact on viability and therefore deliverability. What we will need to understand as we progress with the local plan is whether there are any sites that will not be able to deliver it on site and therefore would need to look at off-site credits, because that does have different implications. But I think overall, the ambition of delivering 20% BNG is not something that would jeopardise delivery of housing in the district, provided it can be delivered on site.
Thank you. Let's see what comes back in the consultation. Members, the recommendation has been moved, but has not been seconded yet. Councillor Cousins has seconded, with including the extra wording to delegate the Kington Councillor Stevens as the leader to agree consultation with Cabinet. All those in favour, please show. And I don't need to go to Mr. Ford. I think it's unanimous. Would you like to confirm that for the record? Well done. The draft local plan is duly approved to go for consultation. As long as full council agrees it.
We're recommending it onto full council.
Thank you very much indeed for your input, officers and members. There are no other items on the agenda. I declare the meeting